Asterisk, the wind moved like memory across the high plains, not loud, just steady. It rattled the dry grass in long waves, brushed against sun-bleached fence posts, and crept through the brittle cracks of the old Maddox ranch. Asterisk Calder stood with one hand on the fence wire, staring toward the south horizon where the heat shimmered like a mirage. His thumb rubbed over the barbed steel, not enough to break skin, just enough to feel something. Asterisk, behind him, the ranch was a worn skeleton of its former self, one barn, sagging and silvered by sun. A house with its roof patched in 3 kinds of tin. No dog barked. No voices echoed. Just the creak of the weather vane and the distant caw of a lone raven cutting circles overhead. He hadn't meant to outlive his family. The fire had taken them 12 winters back. A snapped lantern, a lightning storm, and the wind that never stopped. He'd run into that barn 3 times before the flames sealed it shut. His boy's voice had been the last thing he ever heard clearly. Asterisk, now, silence had become his companion. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that gripped your throat in the night and reminded you who you used to be. Asterisk, this morning. He washed the sweat from his face with rainwater caught in a cracked bowl, pulled on boots stiff from disuse, saddled the roan mare, dust, and rode toward town. Asterisk, the auction yard looked the same as always, sun-bleached men leaning on railings, chewing old stories and fresh tobacco. A bell clanged, dust lifted. Horses whinnied from their pens, swaying as if they too understood the stakes. Asterisk Calder kept his hat low. The sheriff gave him a nod. The rest looked through him. Asterisk, he waited until the bidding got to the bay mustangs, the kind good for hauling or fencing, then raised 2 fingers, that was all. No words. The auctioneer barked numbers, spit into a can, pointed at Calder. Lot 49, sold. Asterisk, but something felt off. There was a stir near the edge of the yard where the last group of wagons sat under tarp. Asterisk, the auctioneer scratched his head. Also part of the lot wagon and passengers included. Asterisk Calder frowned. He hadn't bid on no people. Asterisk men chuckled. One leaned close. Guess you bought yourself a whole mess of trouble, Maddox. He said nothing, just turned toward the wagon. It was nothing special. Canvas torn at the edges. Wheel warped on one side. But when he drew close, a small hand pulled back the flap. Asterisk, a boy. No more than 6, barefoot, dirt-smudged, green eyes wide as the Wyoming sky. Asterisk, behind him, another child, older, protective, holding a length of rope like a weapon. Asterisk, and behind them a woman. Asterisk, she didn't speak, didn't stand, just met Calder's eyes through the shadows of the wagon like she'd already measured the distance between them and found it too far to cross. Asterisk, then an older man shifted near the rear wheel, cane in hand, knee stiff. His face was scarred and sun-worn. A string of carved beads hung from his neck. Cherokee. Calder blinked once. The woman stepped out slowly. She didn't lower her gaze, but she didn't challenge him either. Her hands were calloused, her dress torn at the hem, and when the wind tugged her hair loose from its braid, it carried the faint scent of lavender and wood smoke. Asterisk Calder turned back to the auctioneer. Asterisk, this wasn't part of the damn. Asterisk, all one lot. Terms were clear. Abandoned claim, no papers. Take it up with the marshal if you're sore. Asterisk, he looked back at them. The girl had stepped in front of the younger boy now, shielded him. Asterisk, the old man hadn't moved. His eyes were closed. Breathing. Steady. Asterisk Calder looked at the wagon again, the cracked spokes. The way the axle tilted just slightly, like it had traveled farther than any of them were built for. He exhaled through his nose. Get in. They said nothing the whole way. Back. Asterisk, the road to Maddox Ranch was long and silent. Dust trailing behind the wagon, horses plodding steady beside them. Calder rode ahead, never looking back. Asterisk, but he heard them. The quiet movements. The way the older boy hummed under his breath when the wind got loud. How the little one whispered something soft about stars even though it was still day. Asterisk, when they reached the ranch, he dismounted and tied Dust to the post. Asterisk, the woman didn't wait for instructions. She climbed down, lifted the little one, helped the older boy down, and finally offered a steadying arm to the old man. Inside the house, it was cooler. The wind couldn't quite reach past the warped floorboards and patched shutters. Calder cleared his throat once. Upstairs is mine. You take the room on the left. No one spoke. The woman nodded once. She started to move, then paused and looked at the fireplace. It hadn't been used in weeks. Just ashes and old soot. She set down the youngest boy and knelt. Began gathering kindling from her satchel, by instinct. Like she'd done it 100 times. Calder watched. Later he stood on the porch and watched. Dusk settled in. The sky turned gold and purple, and coyotes howled somewhere out in the low hills. He stayed outside long after dark. Only went in when the wind turned cold. That night, he dreamed of fire again. His son was laughing, chasing a chicken around the yard. His wife stood on the porch, apron smudged with flour, eyes dancing. Then thunder cracked, and flames, and the screams that never left him. He sat up in the dark, chest heaving. The wind howled against the shutters like it remembered too. In the morning, smoke curled from the chimney. Inside, the fire had been tended. Coffee was hot. The woman had taken a wooden spoon and scraped together cornmeal biscuits from what little flour he had. No words. Just small gestures, a boy sweeping dust from the corners. The old man boiling water for a saddle rag. Calder stood at the doorway, hat in hand, not sure whether to be angry or grateful. The wind picked up outside, a dry, wild wind. One that carried storms. He stared at the family now gathered around his table. Uninvited, unexpected, but not unwelcome. Not yet. A week passed, maybe more. Time blurred when you didn't count it. The woman still hadn't spoken. Not once, not when the rains came down in sheets and leaked through the kitchen roof. Not when Calder's mare gave birth early and the foal struggled to breathe. Not even when the youngest boy fell from the hayloft and bloodied his lip. But she moved like someone who knew the weight of silence. She patched the roof using old feed sacks and twine. She cleaned the wound on the boy's lip with whiskey and whispered something against his ear that stopped his tears faster than any doctor ever could. Calder watched from the shadows. He hadn't meant to let them stay, but something in him, maybe the part that remembered lullabies and bread in the oven, didn't chase them off. Still. He didn't trust it, the ease with which they found rhythm in his world. The way the boys raced through the pasture like they'd always belonged. The way the old man mended tools without being asked. The way the woman, Nadine, he'd overheard the old man call her once, carried pain in her shoulders but kept her head high. The storm came hard one night. Lightning cracked like rifle shots across the hills. Calder was in the barn, tending the mare when the thunder shook the rafters and the foal went down, legs kicking, breath shallow. He tried to lift it, mud everywhere. Hooves slipping, rain slamming sideways through the open doors. Then she appeared. No coat, no boots, just drenched to the bone, skirt clinging to her legs. She said nothing, just pressed both hands to the foal's chest, whispered something too quiet to hear, and locked eyes with the creature like she could will it to breathe. Minutes passed. The foal coughed a then it rose, barely, shaking, but alive. Nadine collapsed into the straw. Breathless, wet hair plastered to her cheek. Calder looked at her. Really looked, and saw someone who'd fought storms before. Maybe worse ones. The next morning, the sun broke through and turned the pasture to gold. The boys ran barefoot across the field, chasing frogs in the puddles. Calder sat on the porch sharpening a blade that didn't need sharpening. The old man shuffled beside him, cane tapping slow against the floorboards. You been to war? He asked. Calder didn't answer. I seen it on your shoulders, the old man said. And in your hands, men who've taken life. Their grip never relaxes. He looked out toward the hills. My daughter's seen worse than war. Took a vow not to speak after what happened. Calder glanced sideways. The old man didn't elaborate. Just rubbed a carved bead between thumb and finger like it held a memory he wasn't ready to share. Asterisk names. Elias, he said finally. Boys are Jacob and Eli. Calder nodded once. The silence after was comfortable. Like two ghosts who didn't have to explain how they died. A few days later, the sheriff rode in. Dust trailing behind his horse. Like smoke, Calder met him at the gate, rifle slung but not raised. Mornin', Maddox. Asterisk, sheriff, asterisk, he dismounted, adjusted his belt. Word came in from Cheyenne. Got a poster? Thought you might recognize the name? He handed over the folded paper. Calder opened it. Asterisk, the sketch was rough, but the eyes were right. The curve. Of the jaw, it was Nadine, wanted for arson, prison escape. Aiding Confederates, reward $300, dead or alive. Calder looked up, expression unreadable. They were auctioned off, asterisk. I know. Been tracking this case a while. Rancher named Torrens claimed her family burned his storehouse. The Cherokee man she travels with, rumor is he's part of an old rebel cell. Asterisk, your words say. It's true, asterisk, the sheriff hesitated. Truth's slippery. Especially out here. I just follow orders. Asterisk, he looked past Calder toward the house. You want peace, Maddox, I get it, but peace don't come easy. You shelter them, you make enemies. Calder said nothing. The sheriff tipped his hat. I'll be back next. Full moon, make sure they're gone by then. And rode off. Asterisk, that night, Calder brought the poster into the house, set it on the table. The candlelight flickered across the sketch. The boys were asleep. Elias sat by the fire, whittling a crooked spoon. Asterisk, Nadine stood in the kitchen. Back turned, she glanced at the paper once, didn't flinch. Didn't cry. She walked over, picked it up, studied it. Then she touched the corner where her name had been scrawled, Nadine Elser, asterisk, her voice came out low. Rough from disuse. Asterisk, innocent? Asterisk, Calder stared. It was the only word she spoke, but it said everything. Asterisk, the days that followed were quieter, not colder. Just waiting, asterisk, Calder fixed the back fence. The boys helped. Jacob was a quick learner. He could twist wire like a grown hand, asterisk, Eli. The youngest took to horses. He'd whisper secrets into their manes. One afternoon, Calder found him asleep in the hay beside the foal. Asterisk, Elias carved birds from scrap wood. Nadine tacked a patchwork curtain over the broken kitchen window. Asterisk, one morning, Calder found her by the river, washing clothes. She hummed an old tune, something Appalachian, maybe lullaby. Maybe funeral song, asterisk, when he stepped too close. She flinched, then caught herself. Her eyes met his. Not afraid, asterisk, just tired, asterisk, he reached down, helped wring out the fabric. They worked in silence. Asterisk, a letter came by writer the next week. Calder didn't recognize the handwriting. Asterisk inside was a name he hadn't heard in years. Torrens, the man who owned the barn Calder lost. The man who blamed the fire on faulty lanterns, and then disappeared when witnesses claimed sabotage. Asterisk, the man Nadine was accused of burning. Asterisk, the man who might have set the fire that killed Calder's wife and son. Asterisk, the letter was unsigned. But inside was a simple line, asterisk, she's not who you think she is. And he's not dead. Calder folded the page slow and tight. The wind picked up again that night. Smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, the fire crackled. The boys played checkers. Elias whistled low. Asterisk, Nadine sat on the edge of the hearth. Face in shadow, asterisk, Calder looked around at what his ranch had become. Asterisk, not quiet, not lonely. Not yet a family, but not lost either. Asterisk, he felt it, the breath before a storm. The quiet knowing something was coming. He touched the old burn scar at his wrist and made his decision. The days leading to the full moon turned still, like the land itself held its breath. The boys laughed less. The old man whittled more. Calder saddled his mare every morning but never rode far, just circled the edge of the pasture, rifle. Strapped to his back, eyes scanning the ridgeline. He knew they were coming, and yet the morning broke gentle. Pale blue sky, wind low, birds calling out across the gulch. The scent of dew mixed with ash from the evening cookfire, Nadine moved quietly through the house, packing dried biscuits into a cloth. Not for herself. For the boys, she knew too. Elias sat by the stove, hands gnarled around the carved walking stick. His eyes were far away. Calder stood at the threshold of the barn, oiling the hinges of the back gate, checking the rifle twice. The foal nuzzled at his side. Dust flicked in sunbeams. He caught movement in the east. Just 2 riders at first. Then 4 more. 6 men. Wide-brimmed hats, long coats, rifles slung low. They rode like they had the law behind them and nothing left to prove. Torrens was among them. Calder knew his face, thick jaw, left eye scar, and that cursed grin. They stopped just past the main fence. Torrens dismounted first. Tied his horse slow, like he owned the dirt beneath his boots. Calder Maddox, he called, loud and civil. Come out now. Let's speak like men. Calder stepped from the barn. You're trespassing. Torrens grinned. And you're harboring fugitives. They were auctioned. And you bought 'em. That makes it your sin now. Calder raised his rifle. Didn't aim it? Just held it loose in the crook of his arm. The men shifted in their saddles. One unlatched his. Holster. You got a boy, don't you? Torrens asked. Had? Burned in that fire? That was you, wasn't it? Calder said nothing. Torrens stepped closer. I remember that night. Funny how fire hides the truth. You ever wonder who lit it? Thought maybe your lantern fell. Thought maybe it was your fault. He leaned in. But it was me, Maddox. I did it for the insurance, for the land. You were just collateral. The world narrowed. The wind stopped. Calder's grip tightened. I've been hunting that Cherokee and his mud of a daughter since before the war ended. They got away once. Burned my storage barn. Took my men. Left me for dead? They didn't leave you. Dead enough, Calder said. Then came the first shot. Dust exploded from the dirt beside Calder's feet. He dove behind the trough, rolled, returned fire. One rider dropped. Howling, Elias kicked open the side door of the house and fired his old pistol twice. One man staggered and fell against the fence. Nadine pushed the boys into the crawl space beneath the porch and threw herself down beside the firewood pile. She hadn't held a weapon in years, but she grabbed Calder's old revolver and checked the chamber like a soldier. The wind rose. Torrens shouted orders. Shots cracked against the barn siding. The foal screamed from inside. Calder flanked left, low through the grass, boots wet with blood and dew. He moved like a shadow, came up behind one rider, and fired point blank. The man crumpled, eyes wide in shock. To left, Nadine took a hit to the shoulder. She dropped back, jaw clenched. Elias pulled her behind the trough, pressed his hand too. The wound. Stay still, girl. Then silence. Calder stood in the clearing. Only Torrens remained. Rifle in hand, breathing hard. Blood sprayed across his coat. Not his. He laughed. You gonna kill me, Maddox? Finish the job your fire couldn't? Calder raised the rifle, but his hand shook, not with fear. With memory. He saw the barn. The screams. His boy's face at the window. You're not worth it. Calder said. He lowered the weapon, and that's when Torrens lunged. The fight was brutal. No finesse. Just fists, knees, teeth. They rolled through the dust, into the water trough, overturned it. Torrens got one punch and split Calder's lip. Calder drove his elbow into the man's throat, shoved him back, pinned him with the rifle, but pressed to his windpipe, but he didn't press it down. He looked past the rage, past the blood. To the boys staring through the porch slats. To Nadine, hand pressed to her bleeding arm, whispering Eli's name. To the ranch, broken, weathered, but still standing. Calder stood. Torrens coughed. You don't get to own this land anymore, Calder said. You don't get to own anything. And walked away. The sheriff came at sundown. 3 bodies. 2 wounded. One confession scratched in blood against the barn siding. The lawman gathered what was left. Took turns and chains. Didn't ask questions. They already knew the answers. Days later, Calder sat on the porch, arm bandaged, watching the boys race the wind across the ridge. Nadine sat beside him. Still pale, still quiet. But her shoulder was healing. Elias carved a figure from ashwood. Held it up, a horse rearing, mane wild. Looks like dust, Calder said. Elias grunted. Fool thing's too spirited for her own good? They shared a rare smile. Nadine reached for Calder's hand. Not fast? Just enough. His calloused fingers curled around hers. The ranch changed. The boys built a chicken coop from old planks. Nadine planted a garden. Elias mapped stars at night with a chip telescope Calder didn't know he had. And Calder, he laughed once. Just once. It startled everyone, including himself. One morning, as the wind rolled over the plains like breath, the youngest boy asked, Mr. Maddox, "Are we staying here?" Calder looked at him. Looked at the house. At Nadine, kneeling in the soil, dirt on her cheek. You already have. There were scars, yes. And not every night was peaceful, but the ghosts came less often, and sometimes. The silence wasn't heavy, just quiet, the kind you could live in, the kind that made a broken man believe in something close to home.